There you go. All right, I'm gonna go to another screen here. I'm just gonna show you. We're talking about emails and emails that we get, and so I'm just gonna pull up an example of an email that I sent it off to Adam. This is the email I got. This is what it looks like on the screen to me. Okay. Now I want to note that I block remote content. I don't automatically send back something that says, yes, you can track me. And I don't show remote pictures automatically, and I don't download remote files automatically. And among other reasons, because I'm in cybersecurity. So especially if you're selling to the cybersecurity audience. So this is what I get. This is a pretty big screen. So if I'm looking on a small device at this, or if I'm not using this big wide screen, I don't even see this much. You know, I see like this, right? It's like, okay, what is this about? An overview and demo of SaltStack SecOps for vulnerability remediation. Okay, well, no offense, but right off the top of my head, that just doesn't sound interesting to me. Maybe because it's not telling me something that I'm interested in, but at least it's conveying meaningful information. It has a call to action, right? Register for the webinar. So those are good things, right?
This is presuming, of course, that you know what SaltStack is.
Well, but I don't. But SecOps, I know it's security operations for vulnerability remediation. That's getting rid of vulnerabilities once you know about them. Mm-hmm. So an overview and demo of SaltStack SecOps for that's like too complicated to get in most people's minds in the first few seconds. But but I get a lot of this stuff, so I know sort of what they're talking about. But I'll tell you something else I know. I know I would not want to send advertisements like this.
Right? Why is that? Why is that, Fred?
Well, because, for me, and I think for most people, we're real busy. This is not the only thing we're doing is watching your advertisement. So we'd like to know the informative part quickly. So in the first couple of words, presumably you're going to tell me what you're talking about, right? So I'd like to know why you're emailing me, right? and I'd like to not have to figure it out. And I don't want to have to look at your pictures, whatever they may convey. I don't want to download your pictures on my cell phone, when I'm in an airport somewhere or in India somewhere or something like that. So it has to be something that conveys the information to me efficiently and effectively. And it's fine that there's lots of additional information. It's just that it has to get to the point. Does that make sense, Adam?
Absolutely. In journalism, they call that burying the lead. And that lead is LEDE. And it means
it's LEAD, right?
No, LEDE in journalism.
Oh, really? What's that different than LEAD?
It is. It just means the main point of the story. It just happens to be spelled differently in journalism. Everybody thinks it's LEAD, but anyway.
I've been misspelling it for years.
For years, most people have. And so when you bury the lead like that, especially in something so brief, it is hard to understand really what's going on. Fred has no business getting this because he doesn't know what SaltStack is. And if SaltStack wants only people that understand what they are already to get these emails, then that's the right headline to use. But if they want people to understand what it might do, if they don't know what it is already, then they need something else.
All right, so you probably have advice about what people should do.
Well, certainly just looking at this, if you'd bring that up again, Fred, one of the things that I'm a big...
I can bring up a different one.
No, bring up the same one because I think...
I can't do that. I've already gotten rid of that in the background. I'm looking for another one to show you.
Okay.
So I'll show you another one that's an example, and I'm hoping you'll criticize this one as well.
More than likely. Oh, this is yours.
No, this is ours. This is mine for ours.
Right. So,
all right. So tell me everything bad about this one.
So the first thing is this is a little bit, in my opinion, this is a little bit under-designed, and I would make this look a little bit better. The upsides of this are that it displays really well on almost everything. So simple design is really good for that. And I believe that design is an important part of the brand. And Fred, this actually reflects your brand extremely well, which is straightforward communications, little fluff or no fluff, and we just give you the facts, ma'am. And that's a very strong element of the Fred Cohen brand. And this email reflects that really well. It's very straightforward, nothing fancy going on. We talk about exactly what we want to talk about and get out. So the only thing I would add to this is maybe a little bit nicer display. But other than that, this does what it does really well. And especially because we know the list intimately that's getting this. We know it's your gang and we know what they're looking for from you. So it's in sort of, this is kind of the end state of where you want to be when you do
whether
this
they're
kind of
looking
marketing.
for it or not, they know what they're going to get, right?
Right, exactly. And that's sort of the
Right.
end state you want to get to is, you're sending out communications to people that you know already that they're going to like this. And if you don't know that, then you should be sending them something else.
Okay, so what you just said to me is, number one, know your audience. Number two, know what you're trying to tell them.
Yes.
And number three, tell that to them.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Straightforwardly and simply with, a little bit more narrative than you tend to use in your communications, Fred. But yeah, basically, everybody's busy. You've got 7 seconds to capture somebody's attention. In order to capture somebody's attention in 7 seconds, you need to spark something emotional in them. Except for you, Fred, because you've developed this brand of you are pretty emotionless in your communications. It's just pretty straightforward factual reporting, and that's fine. And if you're putting out stuff that you need to get people's attention, you want them to hook them somehow, you need to hook them, and that hook is always emotional. So you need to play in that realm in order to have a good advertising campaign. Good meaning that it has a reasonable response rate, that it doesn't break the algebra of marketing.
Oh, there's an algebra.
There's an algebra to marketing. One of my favorite all-time marketers is a guy named Jay Levinson. Jay Levinson invented the Marlboro Man. So he knows a little bit about branding. He knew a little bit about branding. I'm not sure he is alive anymore. And what he said, and most of the social media folks these days confirm these numbers, and the data generally says that these numbers are still about right. It takes about 9 touches to reach out and have somebody do anything. Whether do you want them to click on a link, fill out a form, send in a card, whatever it is, it takes about 9 touches, physical touches, that they actually see something that you sent out. Now, these people see about 1/3 of what you send out. So that algebra is pretty simple. 9 times 3 is 27. So it takes 27 pieces of outreach to touch somebody 9 times to get them to do anything, to get them to know you enough to know you enough that that they will trust you enough to do something. So if 7 of those 27 don't look the same, or there's something different about them, or they don't look and smell like you, those don't count anymore. So now suddenly you've gone from 27 to 34 pieces you need to send out in order to get 9 touches that are consistent enough that somebody will do something. So once you start doing stuff like that.
On the other hand, if you try to do that by sending me, 27 emails over the period of 60 days, that's one every other day. I'm just going to turn you into the spam filter.
That's right. That's right. So cadence and timing and all that are also very important. That's true.
All right. So now here, I'm just going to show you, here's another example, right? And, this is just something I get now. It's sent to somebody else, and somehow I was on the carbon copy list. And it's about, whatever it is. I mean, this is that direct thing, right? This is informative,
mm-hmm.
Right? So now I get a taste of my own medicine. I don't see any reason to say dear sir / madam at the beginning of an email.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they used my first name, maybe that would help, or maybe it would just offend me. I don't know. But I don't really get the dear. This is not a letter,
Right.
Whom it may concern.
There's no narrative in here. There's information, but there's no narrative. So this is going to be easy for people to read, but hard for people to remember.
Well, yeah, sort of. But the other thing is, if I'm interested in connectivity and communications, that help business improve process, reach customers more effectively, and manage workforce more effectively, then if I've gotten to read that much, it might be too many words, but okay, this is somebody I would probably contact, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's not unreasonable. On the other hand, the memory will come hopefully from the name, which is, Tatatella. That's a pretty nifty name. But the other thing is, presumably once I connect to them, they're going to communicate with me and I'll remember them.
Mm-hmm.
But I will certainly, forget them rapidly if I'm not interested, which is fine, right? Because the last thing you want is a whole lot of communications that aren't from people that are interested.
Right.
So, and this doesn't have any of that ridiculous graphic stuff in it, and obviously you think differently about it, but okay, so that's another example. This is not terrible. Okay, now let's take a look at this one. Okay, to me, this is getting into the terrible range.
Yeah, this is pretty terrible. So, this is the same thing with the other one that you showed, is people don't test these enough before they send them out. They should have some default mode here where people who have their images turned off, it does something else, or it just eliminates that window and makes it simpler. That's not hard to do in most email service providers. Somebody's just not testing enough. They're not putting in the resources. And my theory about marketing these days is you have to show people you care if you want them to stay customers. And this just shows that they don't care enough to test enough to make it look good for everybody.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the content, though. So,
Sure.
I'll show the graphics in a minute, and they might be very informative. But here's what I see on my screen. It says, "Your secret weapon for security." That's the subject. And then it says, "Time travel with Wind River Simics." Okay. Well, I don't know what Wind River Simics is, but time traveling sounds to me like it's science fiction. And that, of course, that's not what it does. I mean, I know a little bit more about it, but that's fine. But so then it says, "One of our telecommunications customers uncovered a security vulnerability in their system, but fixing it." All right. So first of all, if it's, "Oh my goodness, one of our customers found a vulnerability," I'm sorry, that ship sailed like in 1980. Really? I mean, so there's vulnerabilities in virtually every system.
Sure.
Right? I mean, and it's the nature. You can't build a perfect system. Nobody ever has, right?
Right,
But fixing it meant unraveling the question, why did some network equipment have the vulnerability and not others? Well, really? That was the core question? Why? What's the cause associated with this one having it and not that? Probably not. Probably the most important thing was, which ones? Not why, but which, right? So, and how do I fix it? So learn how Wind River Simics, 2 trademarks registered, one right after the other, allowed our customer to time travel backwards and forwards to find, isolate, and resolve. I'm sorry, the sentence just got to where I just don't care.
I'm interested to see how they take you forward in time.
I do want to see how they go into the future. But we, by the way, we do have simulations that do this. Okay, so now here's what you see that's personally much better. Time travel with Wind River Simics. Okay. And this, by the way, is a picture, I think, from a TV show a couple of years ago. Maybe it was on Netflix or something like that. But
it looks like it, yes.
A time travel thing. But, somehow this just doesn't cut it for me. If I'm serious about security, if I'm a potential customer, the time travel is not the thing that solves a problem that I have, right? If they say, find the cause, or figure out which, or something like that, that makes more sense. Now, on the positive side, I do want to say that, they did not bring fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They didn't say, you're probably vulnerable and only we can help you.
Right.
So it's better than those. So, all right. So I'm going to come back to now our webpage, because I do want to critique us. So
sure.
So do you want me to critique it, or do you want to critique it for me?
Why don't you start, Fred?
All right. Well, let's start with, it has about, but it doesn't have home. Home is this top left-hand corner. Most sites have home as well, so you can get back to it.
Actually, as a web developer, I have to tell you that's not true anymore.
Oh, thank goodness, because my sites have a logo in the upper left-hand corner. and that's usually where you go to get home, or you hit the middle of the top, whatever
Yeah.
whatever the graphic is. Yeah. All right. So this is the new expectation. Got it. Okay. Now, when we went to develop this thing, one of the first things we talked about is, you said, well, we have some examples of advertisements that we've done, but they're just drawings. They're the preliminaries, and that over time, you provide a bunch of these to your customers, and they say, we kind of like this one more than that. Then you test them, you turn them into better art, higher quality art, and so forth. And when we discussed this, my perspective on this was, well, maybe it's better if we show them, sort of what the process is and where we start, rather than just showing them finished beautiful art, because
Right.
really what we're about is helping them develop it.
Right.
But is that a message that's lost? When you come here, do you just say, oh, they're not really very good at doing art?
Today, that's probably what some people will think. And as people gain experience with the site, what they'll see is this is going to be an example of what I'm calling evolutionary design. It's not quite the right word, but I'll get there. And what this is going to do is, over time, as more and more people use this, we'll start looking at the analytics. We've got actually the finished art for all of this. And what we're looking to see is how people interact with it and what does best. Maybe this art is going to end up being the best art that we use. So we'll see all of that, and we'll tune up the site as we go. That'll be true with everything that we're outputting at the moment. It'll all evolve with market feedback and time. And we're actually going to use this early stages to start building OSG's brand. And today, this is it. And it's you and me. And as we go over time and the company gets bigger and we get more diverse and more things under our belt, this site will tune up and become different. And the guy that you see in the middle is what we're calling our hacker hero. And he's going to have an adventure cartoon. And that's going to become our part of our newsletter.
Okay. So at least you're explaining why, but I was looking for criticism. One of the criticisms is it's black and white. There's no colors. There's no motion.
Yes.
It's not very graphical. It's not very interactive.
Yes, and we don't also explain why it's like this.
But so normally you don't explain why your website is the way it is, right?
No, but this is a special case, I think. Well, of course, because it's our website.
Ah, okay. All right. There you go. So now I'm going to take you to another. Now, here's one of the best, in my opinion, examples of an email that I got from Tal Global. No, I know Tal Global. They're an outstanding, they're a private investigations company, and they help do security. And I really like them because they do a lot of public service.
Mm.
And this is a public service one. And look, I don't have any of their graphics. Whatever their graphics were, they're not showing up, right? At least nothing you have to download. If it came with it, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see, Julia's virtual kidnapping is what this is about.
So let me just make a couple of points before you go on, Fred. So one of the reasons I like this is because it's very simple to get everything. You've got, in 7 seconds, you get enough that you might be interested, because it tells you who it's from right at the top. Tal Global tells you what it is. It's a podcast interview. And then they've got this headline that is extremely evocative. Julia's virtual kidnapping. Holy crap, what's that? Now I might be interested. If you don't know
what that is,
but it sounds dire. It has definitely evoked.
This isn't a fantasy site here. This is
Yeah, and it's definitely evocative. Virtual kidnapping sounds kind of nasty. It makes me a little scared.
Right, and then right after that, it explains it. Right. Says, hey, it's an interview with a woman from San Francisco Bay Area who was recently the victim of a virtual kidnapping. We invite you to listen.
And then there's a call to action.
It's called listen. Yeah, you click the button and you listen.
Listen.
So I did, and I listened, and it's really good. I mean, it's informative. It's an interview with a real person that had a real situation, and it walks through it, and at the end it gives you advice that anybody should follow. And so what I did with this one is I sent the URL out to everybody on LinkedIn, right? All of my connections on LinkedIn. And the reason is, look, they don't pay me a commission, right? But it was sufficiently worthwhile that I thought I should help to promote this to others. And that to me says that's really an outstanding, something of real value when other people say to forward. Now I'm going to turn on the graphics And here's the difference when you add the graphics.
It supports the words, but it's not meaningless, or the words aren't meaningless without the picture.
Words are not meaningless. The words
right,
have meaning. Yes, that's right.
In the prior one we showed, the words didn't mean anything without the picture.
Right,
So,
okay.
So, that's, again, it's the problem of testing and caring. You have to care enough to actually experiment with that as you're marketing. It's part of actually our expenses in putting up websites, for instance, in the past 5 years have more than doubled, simply because we have to do so much more testing.
So when you
these
say all
guys
that,
aren't doing enough, or not these guys, but the prior ones weren't doing enough.
yeah, partly I think that's because people are using these more advanced mechanisms on their websites to try to make them modernistic, and I'm just not a fan of that. I use websites to convey a different sort of information, I guess. But so, all right, so there are some really good examples out there as well, and I just did, I wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
And there's lots more to know about this, obviously, and we've only sort of touched the surface on this, but a lot of it has to do, I think, with understanding the way people think about things.
Yes.
And so that's really about psychology, or about brains.
Very much so.
So I thought what we might do is next week talk about brains. Want to talk about brains next week?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we're good to go. Next week we'll talk about brains. And brains, yeah. And obviously something about brains related to cybersecurity, go to market
and marketing.
And company, yeah.
Absolutely.
So until next week, I want to thank everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Should we advertise for next week saying brains? What do they have to do with security?
Yes. Or
it might get a lot of viewers.
Is your brain secure?
Well, I don't think so.
I know mine's not.
There you go. Well, it's amenable to all sorts of psychological, attacks, which are being used constantly by the people in marketing, right?
Of course, that's my job.
Oh, your job is to exploit my brain?
Exactly.
Okay, I think we might all be in trouble. All right, in the meantime, let's end the recording and end the call, and we'll see you next week.